Rest in Profits live podcast, dishing the dirt on the death care industry. Welcome to the Rest in Profits podcast. I'm your host, Tim.
And I'm your host, Darren.
Hey, Darren, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I cannot complain today. It's Friday, and last time we got together, I was having problems with my septic tank. And this week I've been a full week without air conditioning, but thank God the air conditioning is running today.
That's awesome. I know it's warming up where I'm at. It's been in mid-80s, and I know it's warming up where you're at, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, hopefully this afternoon I can get out and about and enjoy some of this warm weather. Looks like we've got on tap today. We're going to talk about some creepy funeral home stories. Talk about that. We'll talk about, a little later in the podcast, we'll talk about where some celebrities are buried. And anything else that I'm missing there?
No, I think we'll just go through some of the videos that we've recently, posted, and if you haven't watched them, for sure check these out because there's some strange stories, and we've seen over the years lots of stuff, but some of the stuff it's like you can't even make it up.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, some of this stuff is just strange. I mean, it is really, really strange. Looks like first on our list is Where's His Head? And this is a story that happened back in the 80s. Mr. Anthony Parisi, he was a grocery store owner, and he was in his, like I said, he was in his 80s. I believe he was 83. He passed. He was the co-founder of a grocery store in New York. And it looks like when they went in the next morning, the funeral home staff, his head was gone. Now, I found that very... It's shocking. It's creepy. But, I mean, I've never had that kind of experience in any of the locations I covered. How about you?
No, I hadn't. I mean, it's, it sounds like, they brought him in. Maybe he passed. They, went and picked him up, brought him in the next day. They was going to come in and do the embalming or whatever the case may be. Maybe send him off to get cremated. I don't know. But, yeah, based on the video, they showed up the next day at the funeral home and there was no head.
Yeah.
So makes you, nothing else was disturbed, though. That's the weird thing about it. So it makes you think that, he was in New York. I don't know. Grocery store, small business owner, maybe he owed somebody money. Maybe, who knows? Could have been the mob, could not have been the mob. I don't know. See, maybe he owed somebody money and a bad situation there. It looks like they were trying to make a statement by, cutting off his head.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess some heads are going to roll. So much for a head of lettuce at a grocery store. Anyway, I did a lot of research on this. I was so intrigued by it. And to this day, they never found, meaning the police department, they never developed a serious lead. Nothing was left to give any kind of clue. They're not even really sure how his head was removed. They believe, because it was clean, that it was probably a scalpel or a razor blade. And having been in the medical field, I will tell you there are certain surgical instruments that are large that act as a scalpel that could have gotten that done for sure, but they've never found anything. And growing up here in the Deep South in the late 80s, we were surrounded by the satanic panic. The newspaper clipping that I found going all the way back to 1983, they questioned that. They mentioned maybe it had something to do with the mob, like you said. They also mentioned could it have been a cult, because we were gripped for a few years in that satanic panic. And but to this day, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And you would think that, maybe back in the 80s, I'm sure, just like today, people doing research and things like that, but you think that if they ever want to study the brain or something like they're taking everybody's head that's there, not just his. So, yeah, weird situation, but never to find, what do you do with the head? So, to never find the head, it's sort of strange.
Well, if it had been a mafia thing, you would think his head would have showed up somewhere, kind of as a calling card. Hey, don't double cross us.
Like in his mailbox at his house or something.
Yeah. Or like The Godfather. You wake up and there's a horse head in your bed or something.
Right.
But it's never been found. But you know, the other thing too, it could have been a group of teenagers just being morbid. It could be sitting in a glass jar in formaldehyde somewhere right now. We don't know.
But yeah, definitely check that video out. Like I said, some of these are, shorts, but they're really interested in the details, and it makes you wonder, like you said, want to do some more research on your own.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Next up, it looks like Bobby Wilkes. This was a funeral home director, again in the 80s. People started wondering about some of his practices, and they ended up digging up about 30 graves to investigate. They were filled with trash. There was no lids. Sometimes there was no coffin. You ever run up on anything like that in any of your locations?
Actually, I have, and I was just looking at the details on this one. It's like in 1988 is when a lot of this happened here, and it was in Tennessee. But yeah, actually, one time we had a family who had a bit of a dispute with a funeral home, and the family was determined that that the funeral home buried the wrong person. It was supposed to be their mother, but they thought it was another lady. Things didn't quite look right. So a week after she was buried, we actually had to, dig her up basically and exhume her. And then at that point, they opened up the casket because I think she had some distinct birthmarks, I think on her legs or something like that. But so they opened up the casket, which that's a whole other story, out in the middle of the road, in the middle of the cemetery. And so the family could check for birthmarks. And the whole bottom, waist down, in the casket, full of trash. I mean, it was just, you would think that, whoever, they just, their trash from home, whatever it might have been, they didn't want to pay for the trash service, I guess. So they just ended up dumping it in the bottom of this casket. And like I said, waist up, just like if you've been in any kind of funeral service where you can see the body, open casket, everything normal. But then when they open the bottom up, just tons of trash. Can't even see her legs. Just tons of trash. So that doesn't surprise me.
That's horrible. And you really, being in the industry, I never experienced that. But you hear about so many things. I mean, I've heard of funeral home directors shooing the family away and stealing jewelry. I've heard of that. Just all kinds of things like that. Matter of fact, one of our other videos, we weren't scheduled to talk about it, but it just made me think about it. A woman was caught on camera stealing her grandma's ring. It's just kind of, who does things like that? It happens.
That's a great video to watch too, because you can see on the camera where she sort of slowly walks up to the casket. Grandma's in the casket and with her hands crossed and arms and hands, and the granddaughter covers her hand up, like with her sleeves, had on long sleeves, covers her hand up with her sleeve and starts digging in the casket. And come to find out, little spoiler alert, the ring wasn't even real. It was like a $10 just ring.
Yeah.
So I think she went to prison for a while, and but over trying to steal a $10 ring.
Well, I do know that at one of the funeral homes that I oversaw, and guys, for people that are listening, just to catch you up to speed, Darren and myself worked for a corporate-owned cemetery company, and they're very large. They just underwent a name change, and we'll get to the ever story about them someday. For right now, it'll just... I guess we'll be stoned a little more, Darren, before we can actually go into detail about all that, because if you'll notice in some of our tongue-in-cheek, I'm sorry, I had to do it. Some of our other podcasts, we couldn't mention our names. So now we're at a point now we can at least say who we are. But there's just some other things that we can't say. But we worked in the business collectively together for about 14 years combined. We started work together. We worked our way up through the ranks. And so a lot of these stories that you hear, some of them are from our own personal experience in dealing with funeral homes and cemeteries over the years. And
they were out of Pennsylvania, which I think their new headquarters is out of Chinatown.
Yeah, I believe so.
In the end, staying down here in the South, you can put makeup, all the makeup, lipstick on a pig that you want to put on it, but it's still a pig.
It's
definitely watch those corporate cemeteries and funeral homes.
That's right. And if you don't know, in some of our videos, you see us name drop. For example, one of our videos, there's it's not funny. I mean, it happened, but there's a hearse that dropped a body out of the back of it, and we refer to a name. That particular person is a good friend of ours. It is an inside joke. We are picking on him, and he's a good guy. Another name you hear us mention from time to time, we could care less. So anyway, there's your background there. But all that to lead up to say the one time that I did have to deal with theft at the funeral home, it involved a person that had died at a nursing facility, and it was her ring was missing. It was blamed on one of my staff members, and lo and behold, when you got to digging through and going through all the reports, it was in fact the nursing home employee who took the ring. So.
Yeah, and going back to this video on the talking about trash, and it goes back that the family noticed that this guy was throwing the potted flowers into the grave, and I think a lot of that is just not wanting to do the job, being lazy. I mean, a lot of times people, before they leave, and you were talking about they'll rush people off, but before they leave, they'll grab whatever flowers they're going to take. So instead of hauling the flowers, to a dump or whatever it might be, they just, put them in the grave and go ahead and fill it in, which is, it's sad.
It's sad. In doing research for this one before we put it together, he pled guilty to 48 charges and was sentenced to almost 30 years of prison time. He served nearly all of his prison time. He did die, pass away in 2017 at the ripe old age of 81. But in doing the research, it does look like the people that turned him in were actually related to him.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of what he was doing, because he was burying people without vaults, and of course, like we talked about coffins and casket stuff with trash, but it sounds like maybe the reason he served so much time is because it sounds like maybe he was possibly selling like vaults or whatever it might be and was never, putting those in the ground. I'm sure fraud was part of it.
Yeah, I'm not saying he was right in any of that, and maybe I'm a little jaded with the experience that I have, but it looks like if you've been to enough funerals, you kind of would have thought something was off at the setup. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does.
So I'm not sure. And then the last, or one of the last videos that we uploaded this just a little while ago, was the story of what she did to the body. And this is a lady had passed away. What were your thoughts on that story? I was pulling it up. Sorry for the lost train of thought there, but
I'm trying to figure out that one.
Shana Lauren Sims was the victim. She was 28 years old at the time. Or I'm sorry, she was the perpetrator. She entered into the funeral home. This happened in 2015 in Oklahoma. She entered into the funeral home posing as a makeup artist. And,
it also says she broke in. I don't know what the details of that are. Either she, broke into the place, or because they did charge her with burglary. Mm-hmm. But it says she did pose as a makeup artist. So, that's crazy.
Doing the research for that, the reason she was charged with burglary, and you're messing with me because in doing that intro, I had in doing that video, I obviously had trouble saying burglary. You just trying to get me to say it. The reason she was charged that way is because she came into the building under false pretense. Now,
okay, gotcha. So it wasn't in the middle of the night or anything like that.
No. So if anybody is in law enforcement or knows and it's different than what we have perceived that to be, please make a comment in the YouTube section comments and let us know.
Absolutely.
But it looks like her husband possibly may not have been having an affair. And so
apparently she thought he was.
Yeah. Well, 16 years in prison, buddy. She's still in prison.
So I'm looking back at this. So the lady passed away that she thought her husband was having an affair with. So she poses now think about the lengths people go to get revenge. She poses as a makeup artist, goes in and mutilates the body, basically. Cuts off the breasts, the toes, takes off her hair, and then slashed the lady's face.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty. It's crazy how much, like I said, the lengths people go to get revenge. That's well thought out, I guess.
Yeah,
in a bad way.
In a very bad way. I mean, you know, you can't help but wonder that's a little bit beyond. I mean, that's this woman has to have had. I mean, we've all been angry. I get all that, but that's pure blind rage right there. And she thought it out.
And it happened she got 16 years in prison. So it happened in 2015. So she's out right now.
Yeah.
Think about it, she's been out for a couple years almost.
Yeah.
So that's the scary part, is this lady's out of prison at this time.
So if any of you know this lady, please do not piss her off if you are making any funeral arrangements at this time.
Or mess around with her husband.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with Darren, we're at the midway point of our podcast, and I'm going to leave it up to you to say a few words from our dear sponsor, so take that away.
Yeah, thanks to our friends, Discount Bronze Memorials. Right now, you can visit them, of course, discountbronzememorials.com. They do have 20% off through this month, through the end of April. Any orders, they're also offering free shipping, which is unheard of. But I think, great deals on, if you're looking for a bronze memorial for a loved one, great time to get one. Give you an example, corporate cemeteries, 24 by 14 is your standard individual size marker with a vase. You're looking with fees and tax and all that, you're over $3,000 in a corporate cemetery. Discount Bronze Memorials, with tax, with shipping, you're at $19.96. I mean, it's unbeatable deals if you're looking for a bronze memorial. And the great thing about that, like I said, bronze memorials, from my experience, you'll never get over the passing of a loved one, but having a space marked with a marker memorial definitely does give you a little bit of closure, and it helps in that healing process. So definitely go visit discountbronzememorials.com.
Absolutely. We thank them so much for sponsoring our podcast today. And folks, if you'd like to learn more about us, our podcasts are being uploaded on Spotify, Apple platform, and a few others. But we're also on YouTube. The name of the YouTube channel is Rest in Profits. Please give us a look up, like us, share us, and subscribe. We're growing pretty fast, but of course we would love to grow a little faster and help get our story out. Anybody else you'd like to mention today, Darren, before we go back in?
No, I think that's it. I mean, there's these videos. I'm just, as we're talking, just looking back at some of these that we posted. And I think we've got over 80-some videos currently, and between shorts and actual videos ourselves. But it's one thing that just popped out to me, and I know we didn't schedule to talk about this one, but looking inside of a grave, there's a video of someone doing that. Most people, we're used to that being in the industry, but just to be able to see after a grave's dug, right before the body's placed, to be able to go and look inside to see what everything looks like, is very interesting if you don't know anything about it. But definitely check that one out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, folks, we post a lot of things. Some of it's funny, some of it's serious, some of it's paranormal, some of it's creepy, crime related. But basically what we're wanting to do is educate you on some level. There's always a right way and a wrong way to do everything. And the purpose that we had in posting that particular video, we wanted you to see what it looks like before they lower a loved one in the ground. And the dig out there in that video was spot on. It was laid out correctly. Everything was perfect about that, and that's how it's supposed to look.
You're right. That's it. That's a perfect setup. If it doesn't look like that, then somebody's not doing their job, because that is a perfect setup.
Absolutely. Another thing that I found pretty disturbing, and we've talked about it. We've got us some other content coming, but we've talked about this a lot. I never have personally experienced this in any of my cemeteries, and I don't think you have. If you have, you can share it. But are you not completely 100% amazed at the amount of if they bleep me out, I'm sorry, necrophilia? I mean, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I never had to, with funeral homes, never had to deal with anything like that, thank God. But yeah, some of the videos that we've got on here, I mean, it'll disgust you. But it's something like you mentioned earlier, people, need to know. Well, it does happen. Some sick people in the world, but there's definitely some interesting videos on there.
Well, it's just like this one here, this news story, and obviously this happened some time back. But he broke into the funeral home and had relations with someone who's unalive, and I can't fathom that. I mean, and then we have another video of a lady who had gotten herself pregnant from a corpse. You remember that one?
And that's probably the wildest video and story that I've ever heard. I mean, you think about it, this lady, she didn't work at the funeral home, but she did autopsies. But I think she, if I remember right, it was over 60 cases of she'd had relations with men from the ages of probably underage to up in the maybe 70s or maybe even older. But
the youngest one on record was 17. The oldest one was in his 70s. And the person that she became supposedly, and guys, if anybody in the medical field's watching this,
please comment. Let us know,
because we got questions.
Exactly.
we got questions, and and you know what those questions are. So if you want to explain that in the comments, we would greatly appreciate that. But the person she supposedly became impregnated by was a car wreck victim. So that brings into play the condition of this body, and that's question number one. Question number two is how, and question number two has several parts to it, and some of those parts are hard to comprehend. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think about this lady. I mean, I don't know if they have to do it, and this is, like I said, put it in the comments if you know the answer to this. But if it was, maybe they thought he was drinking and driving or something like that, and a toxicology report. I mean, I don't know why they would want to do an autopsy, but to think that, I don't know how long it would have took to get the body from once he died to to do the autopsy. But yeah, the main question is, could she have got pregnant from this guy?
Yeah.
And I know it's going to depend on the time, and we don't know that. I think this happened back in 2017, but they did, like it says in the video, they did a DNA test and all that, and it was traced back to this guy once they did a DNA test on the baby. So, yeah, really weird.
Very weird. And as we move on from this, stay tuned, guys, because I have found, in doing the research, I found another story related to this that is even more shocking than the two that we've just talked about, and it involves multiple counts of necrophilia going on over a span of years. So hopefully we can get that up and posted before the weekend. That's just horrific. It's just gross. But if we could, let's just move on to a lighter note. And we did a series on Kids Say the Most Paranormal Things, and part 3 is the one that I was going to talk about, Darren. And this is the one where it talks about the big guys. And basically, there was a really bad car wreck, and a 4-year-old child was involved along with an infant, and they received no injuries. There was no injuries whatsoever. And, when it was all said and done, the 4-year-old made comment, who were the big guys? Who were the guys that kept me safe? They put their arms around me. I felt safe and secure. Who were they?
Yeah, that's you hear stories about children being able to or seeing things that we can't see. I mean, I don't know. Like a comment below for sure.
Yeah.
But the thing I wonder is, when does that age cut off? At what point in time do they stop seeing things? That could be supernatural. So
could be. Well, I'll give you my own story. And I was in my early 20s. I was going to school to be a surgical technician. I was on the way home, and a guy in a truck ran an intersection, and he hit me very hard. I was driving a Nissan Sentra, spun the car completely around, did a complete 360, busted all 4 tires. I hit the steering wheel so hard that I bent the steering wheel completely straight up. My arm hit the side windshield on the driver's side, and I was cut on my arm. It took 18 stitches, but I was cut all the way down to the bone. And I'm trying to catch my breath, and I'm coming from doing clinicals, so it's one of those things. I'm trying to assess myself, and because I can't catch my breath, I'm assuming that I've a rib is ruptured a lung or lacerated a lung, and I can't catch my breath. And all of a sudden, I hear this male voice, and it says, "Son, calm down. You're going to be okay. I've already called for help. Everything is fine. You're bleeding really bad. Let's get you calm." And this person, and this happened in the late 80s, put his bare hand over the cut on my arm, and later on it was determined that I was cut down to the bone. And he was attempting to stop the bleeding.
Right.
And he talked to me, and he was real calm, he was reassuring, and I couldn't see his face because of the angle I was at and the way the car was bent up. They had to cut me out of the car. And Darren, it still gives me chills to this day, and that's one of the reasons I posted the story. I've never told you this story. When the ambulance got there and the fire department got there and they started cutting me out, I asked, "Is the fellow that helped me still here? I need to thank him." And I'll never forget it. The MT guy looked down at me, and he smiled. He said, "Son, I think you're in shock." He said, "There was nobody here when we got here."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, there had to be." He said, "Somebody called. They were assuming because it was an intersection that's one of the businesses or houses around called." He said, "But son," he said, "you're out here in the middle of a busy intersection." And it didn't take him no time to get to me. He said, "But you're by yourself. There's nobody here." And so I don't think there's an age cutoff to that, buddy. I mean, it's one of those things.
Sounds like you're right. And stuff like that's happening every day. That's something else. If something like that's happened to you, or you know someone has, share that story in the comments.
Yeah, please do, because
love to hear it.
we would love to. If any of you've got a story you'd like to tell, Darren, give them an email if you would, and we'll be glad to share the story. We'll make a reel out of it or short out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I would send it to restinprofits@gmail.com. It's probably the best one to use, and that'll come directly to us.
All right. And if you'd repeat that for me one more time, Darren.
Yeah, restinprofits@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, sir. And
yes, sir.
We would be more than happy to do that. But that's one of the reasons I posted that story. It just resonated with me, and I never told you that. But yeah, that was definitely a bad day. But I have always believed that my own little angel, my guardian angel, paid me a visit that day. So,
sure sounds like it.
Yeah, yeah. And moving from there, the other one that I found pretty interesting, where it says kids say the most paranormal things, was part 2. And it was talking about a 3-year-old. They were strolling past a cemetery, and he made an unexpected remark, and he said, "My brother's in there." Do you remember that story?
Yeah, I think I remember that one.
And he was reminded that he didn't have a brother, to which he responded very matter-of-factly, "No, Mama, from before. The other lady that was my mama." That kind of gives you a little chills. That's a little spooky.
Yeah, that makes you wonder what's going on there.
Yeah. So, thankfully, none of my children ever said anything to me like that.
Yeah, he probably got slapped and she said, "I'm your mama." That's what happened to me.
Yeah. If it had been in the Deep South, it'd been like, no, I am your mama. So
Exactly.
And moving on from there, some of the celebrity stories that we've talked about, the burials.
I thought it was interesting on that, talking about the burials. I think we did a video, you may have done this one, on the 4 most visited graves or burial sites. And let me look at that one. So I know JFK was the first, which makes sense. I mean, he 2.4 million visitors per year.
Yeah.
Being the president and everything that happened, assassinated, I can understand that one definitely. I see Princess Diana, second most visited at 1 million per year. People. Then interesting at third. I'm not really into martial arts, but Bruce Lee. He had over 20,000 visits per year. Very interesting there.
I didn't have enough space to elaborate on that too, but that would also mean his son Brandon Lee is getting the same amount of visits because they're buried side by side.
Exactly.
Brandon Lee's actually in that picture that I put up.
This one doesn't surprise me. Elvis has 600,000 third, actually 600,000 per year.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. But yeah, we've done a lot of videos on where the people are really interested in that, where famous people, where they're buried, and they want to see. We had a great one on Jimi Hendrix. This, the marker / memorial they did for him was unbelievable. But
beautiful.
But yeah, definitely want, if there's somebody you're interested in seeing, where their burial is and what it looks like or where it's at, in the comments for sure. Put that in there, and we'll look into it and do another video. So we're getting a lot of likes, a lot of views on those. Yeah. People are really it is interesting.
It's it's very interesting too, and you think about too that Wolfman Jack in North Carolina, that was very interesting that he's actually buried in someone's yard. And I actually worked with the funeral director who did that service. I don't know if I told you that or not. And the story behind all that is that the reason he was buried and it's sad, the reason he's buried in someone's yard was lack of funds. So
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And of course, Andre the Giant's in North Carolina. He's not technically buried. They scattered his ashes on his ranch. I thought that was pretty fascinating. I know Billy Crash Craddock is buried here. Andy Griffin, the career criminal who's from LaGrange, North Carolina. I can't think of his name right now, but he was the when they made the movie with Denzel Washington, American Gangster. He's buried here in North Carolina.
Great movie.
Yeah, great movie. Also in North Carolina, in one of our cemeteries, is the his last name was White. His first name escapes me right now, but he was an insurance agent back in the 80s. He was your go-to insurance agent, and his wife had him killed, and come to find out there's a possibility that she killed his child, who was 2 or 3. And if I'm murky on those details, guys, if you know anything about it, please feel free to put it in the comments. But she had him killed, and that's been on the ID channel several times. So
sounds like I saw that like on a Dateline or something like that.
yeah, absolutely. So it's a lot of interesting things here that we have been over. Any other ones you want to go over? We're getting looks like.
Yeah, we're close to time. I definitely, like I said, guys, if you're out there listening, you haven't looked at these, a lot of them are shorts. I mean, you're under a minute. But it's definitely interesting facts, and then we've got plenty of videos as well that ties a lot of it in together.
Yeah.
So, but a little preview of what's coming up. I know we've talked about this, but so a lot of the corporate cemeteries are perpetual care, meaning basically when you purchase the rights to be buried there, burial rights, say it's a $4,000 burial right, 10% of that's supposed to go to perpetual care. So, you're looking at, $400.
Yeah.
But we've noticed, not only when we worked in the industry, but, just doing research and things like that, a lot of the corporate-owned cemeteries, they're not keeping up with the cemetery, whether it's mowing, things like that. But what's really bad right now is the condition and shape of a lot of the headstones. So we're going to be doing a series of videos about, showing cleaning headstones, the way to clean headstones, and there's different ways. Most are not right, but we're going to show you the perfect way to do it, and we'll have some videos coming out on that. But it's definitely going to be interesting, and we're trying to create. If the cemeteries aren't going to do what they're supposed to, the corporate-owned cemeteries, and take care of the headstones, then we're going to start working in our area, and hopefully people will join on. I'm not going to call it a movement, but if you want to, that's fine. But join with us and help clean up some of these and honor the loved ones that people that have passed. Especially, we're going to do a lot of veterans as well. That you can't even. Some of them died in World War II, and you can't even see their name, their date, due to whether it's just dirt and grime or moss that's growing on it. But we're definitely going to clean them, and you'll see those in videos coming up.
Absolutely, and folks, that's a good way to give back and pay respects and be respectful to our lost loved ones. And in our podcast, we also always try to leave a tip or two in dealing with corporate-owned cemeteries. Folks, a lot of times, and if you notice, Darren made mention to, he used the word right, the burial right. Unfortunately, a lot of times you'll hear terms like buying a plot, buying a space, I own a space, I own a plot. You don't. You own the right to burial in that specific spot. And think of it this way, if you actually owned that piece of real estate out and out, you'd pay property tax on it. So be careful. If you're not paying property tax. Exactly. So be careful in dealing with them, because they will try and trip you up on that one thing. That's just one of the many ways. And you need to educate yourself in these situations. The more knowledge you have, they use inside lingo. You'll hear us slip up and say words like space and marker, where you're used to hearing gravestone or tombstone, a grave. If you ever deal with a lot of people in the industry, you will never hear the word graveyard or grave or anything like that. You'll hear terms like garden and space and things like that. So, but guys, as we come to an end, Darren, if you want to tell them where they can find us at and give thanks to our sponsor one more time, we'll wrap it all up.
Yeah, of course. You can find us on YouTube, Rest in Profits. That's our channel there. You'll be able to see all the videos. You can, correspond with us through that. And then, of course, we have Facebook, all that good stuff as well. But just search wherever you're at, search Rest in Profits. If you want to contact us, best way is restinprofits@gmail.com. Any questions you have, definitely leave comments, and we'll try to get back with we'd love to answer all the comments if we can. And then, definitely thanks to our friends at Discount Bronze Memorials. Once again, they are offering 20% off on all bronze, entire stock really, all bronze markers, vases, through the end of April, and free shipping as well. I mean, you cannot beat it. Usually a lot of this stuff is hundreds and hundreds of dollars just to ship. So definitely check them out, discountbronzememorials.com.
Absolutely, absolutely. And folks, as we come to an end, on behalf of Darren and myself, we would like to thank you so much for listening. And once again, we do want you to know that our voices are many, but if we all band together, a roar will be heard. Darren, anything you want to add before we kick it off and say so long?
That's it.
All right, guys. Well, until next time, we look forward to talking to you. Again, please give us a visit on our YouTube channel, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Rest in profits. Out and over. Thanks so much, guys.